The wind that night felt like it had teeth. It sliced through the quiet streets of the small town just outside Chicago, whipping snow across the empty sidewalks and rattling the loose metal sign above the corner grocery store. Most people had already hurried home hours ago, escaping the brutal cold. But Daniel Carter was still out. He always was. Daniel tightened his worn jacket around himself as he pushed his shopping cart slowly down the sidewalk. Inside the cart sat 2 paper grocery bags, a pack of diapers, and a small pink backpack that belonged to his 5-year-old daughter, Lily. Single fathers didn't get the luxury of rest. "Daddy, are we almost home?" Lily asked, her voice small beneath the oversized scarf wrapped around her chin. Daniel glanced down at her where she sat inside the cart, bundled in blankets. "2 more blocks, Peanut," he said with a tired smile. "Then hot chocolate." Her eyes brightened instantly. "With marshmallows?" "Extra marshmallows." She giggled softly, and the sound warmed him more than any coat ever could. Life hadn't turned out the way Daniel had imagined. 3 years earlier, his wife had died suddenly from a heart condition no one knew she had. One moment she was laughing in their kitchen, the next moment she was gone. Since then, Daniel had been father, mother, provider, and protector all at once. He worked the late shift as a janitor at a small office building downtown. The pay was barely enough, but it kept the heat on and food in the fridge. Most days he felt like he was barely holding life together with duct tape and hope. But Lily never noticed the cracks. As they turned the corner toward their apartment building, Daniel suddenly slowed. Something dark lay ahead near the bus stop bench. At first he thought it was just a pile of snow-covered trash bags. But then the wind shifted, revealing a human shape. Daniel's stomach dropped. "Stay here," he said quietly. He hurried forward, boots crunching through the snow. A woman lay slumped against the bench, half buried in drifting snow. Her coat was thin and soaked. Her hair, dark and tangled, was stiff with frost, and she wasn't moving. "Hey!" Daniel knelt beside her quickly. "Ma'am?" He touched her shoulder. Her skin was ice cold. For a terrifying moment, he thought he was too late. Then she stirred faintly, letting out a weak, shaky breath. Relief washed through him. "She's alive," he whispered. Behind him, Lily's voice trembled. "Daddy, is she okay?" Daniel looked at the woman again. Whoever she wasn't going to survive another hour in this storm. He stood, decision already made. "Yeah," he said firmly. "But she's coming home with us." He carefully lifted the woman. She was lighter than he expected, her body limp with exhaustion and cold. Snow continued to swirl around them as he carried her the rest of the way down the block. Lily pushed the cart beside him like a determined little helper. Their apartment building was old and tired, the kind with flickering hallway lights and creaky stairs. But tonight it felt like a sanctuary. Daniel kicked the door open with his boot. Inside, the warmth of the radiator hit them immediately. "Blankets," he told Lily gently. She rushed to the couch, grabbing every blanket she could find. Daniel laid the woman down carefully and peeled off her frozen coat. Her hands were pale and trembling. "Hey," he said softly. "Stay with me." Her eyes fluttered open briefly. They were a sharp shade of gray. For a moment she looked confused, almost frightened. "You're safe," Daniel assured her. Lily appeared beside him with a mug. "I made tea," she announced proudly. Daniel smiled. "You did great." He helped the woman sit up slowly and held the cup to her lips. She took a shaky sip. Warm color slowly began returning to her face. "Thank you," she whispered hoarsely. Daniel waved it off. Anyone would have helped. But that wasn't entirely true. A lot of people had probably walked past that bus stop tonight. The woman looked around the tiny apartment. Faded couch, secondhand furniture, crayon drawings taped to the walls. She blinked slowly. "Why?" she asked. Daniel shrugged as if it were obvious. "Because you needed help." Lily climbed onto the couch beside her. "I'm Lily," she said proudly. "This is my daddy. He saves people." Daniel chuckled awkwardly. "I clean offices," he corrected. But the woman studied him quietly, as if that answer didn't quite fit. After a while, she fell asleep under the blankets. Daniel dimmed the lights and carried Lily to bed. "Is the lady going to be okay?" Lily asked sleepily. "I think so." "Good," she murmured. "You're a good saver." Daniel sat on the edge of her bed for a moment after she drifted off. Then he returned to the living room. The stranger was still asleep. Up close, he noticed something odd. Despite her condition, her clothes were clearly expensive. Her boots alone probably cost more than his entire outfit. Her hands were delicate but not fragile, not someone used to sleeping on sidewalks. He frowned slightly but pushed the thought aside. It wasn't his business. An hour later, she woke again. This time she seemed more alert. "Where am I?" she asked. "Safe," Daniel said simply. She sat up slowly. "You're home?" "Yeah." She looked around again, noticing the little details. The chipped coffee table, Lily's drawings, the stack of overdue bills on the counter. "You brought me here?" "Couldn't leave you out there." She studied his face for a long moment. "You don't even know who I am." Daniel leaned back in his chair. Didn't seem important. A small, surprised smile touched her lips. "That's unusual. World could use more unusual," he said. She hesitated before speaking again. "My name is Victoria." Daniel nodded. "Nice to meet you, Victoria." She flexed her fingers slowly as warmth returned. "I was supposed to catch a car after a meeting downtown," she explained. "But my phone died and I got turned around in the storm." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "You walked miles in this?" "I underestimated the weather." He chuckled softly. "Chicago winters don't forgive that mistake." Victoria looked at him again, curiosity growing in her eyes. "You live here with your daughter?" "Just us." "And you still stopped to help a stranger?" Daniel shrugged again. "Couldn't teach Lily to ignore people who need help." For the first time, Victoria looked genuinely moved. Silence filled the room for a moment. Then Daniel suddenly stood up. "Well," he said, stretching. "You're coming with me." She blinked. "What?" "I've got to drop Lily at school and head to work in the morning." "You shouldn't be wandering around yet." "You don't have to." "I know," he interrupted gently. "But I'm doing it anyway." Victoria stared at him in disbelief. This man barely had enough for himself. Yet he kept giving. "All right," she said softly. Morning came quickly. Lily bounced into the living room full of energy. "The lady didn't freeze," she announced happily. Victoria laughed for the first time. "No, I didn't." After breakfast, Daniel drove them in his old pickup truck across town. The heater barely worked, but Lily sang loudly enough to keep everyone warm. When they finally reached the downtown business district, Victoria asked him to stop in front of a tall glass skyscraper. Daniel frowned. "You work here?" Victoria hesitated. Then she turned to him. "Actually, I run it." Daniel blinked. "What?" She stepped out of the truck and looked up at the massive building. Across the front, large silver letters read, Hawthorne Global Industries. Victoria turned back to him. "My full name is Victoria Hawthorne." Daniel stared. The name was familiar. Anyone who followed business news knew it. She was one of the most powerful CEOs in the country. His brain struggled to catch up. "You're that Victoria Hawthorne?" She smiled faintly. "The frozen one you dragged home, yes." Daniel ran a hand through his hair. "Well, that's new." Victoria leaned slightly into the truck window. "You saved my life last night." He shook his head. "Just helped someone." "No," she said gently. "You showed me something I rarely see." Lily leaned forward curiously. "Are you a princess?" Victoria laughed. "Something like that?" She looked back at Daniel, her expression thoughtful. "You said something last night," she reminded him. "That the world could use more unusual." He nodded. "Well," she said quietly, "I think my company could use someone exactly like you."